Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this December 6th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you can't get it there, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com. That's arcticbeacon.com. And you can listen to shows and read articles that go back over a decade regarding what I call the Vatican-led New World Order and all its tentacles and all the repercussions throughout the world. This spiritual, they call it a spiritual organization, but actually it's a satanic political monster that wants to absorb the whole world into its clutches. And you see that going on in America today. But, very few people understand that, and that's why we do this show. Now, as any other radio show that's been on a long time, it evolves. And my show has changed over the years, where now I concentrate on maybe one or two topics during the show and bring on selected guests and go in depth into a story instead of bringing on like they do on, when I first started out this radio show, I would have little segments and I would bring on numerous guests and we'd seem to, do soundbite radio. Not as bad as they do on the, somebody always calls. We're not taking calls today. It's a lot better than the soundbite mainstream, but we used to do more, a lot more subjects, but not concentrating on the real enemy and not concentrating on the spiritual and secular importance of understanding who the Vatican, what this organization really is, and about their military arm, the Jesuits. Now, back in the old days, I used to run a segment called Quotes regarding the Jesuits. And what I found interesting about this was that there were a lot of high-level people, a lot of pastors back in the late 1800s and early 1900s that were outspoken about the Jesuits. Now, the farther you went back, you would even get people like Napoleon, Lafayette, John Adams, really high-level people telling the country what this group was all about. But as time has passed now, very few high-level people, so to speak, and I put that in quotes, really tell you the truth about the Jesuits and what they're about. And could that be that they are in control by them? Of course it is. Now, you don't even hear pastors talk about this. And most of them have been usurped into this ecumenical movement, which is the Vatican's umbrella, that's taken over Protestantism. Now, the few pastors that speak about the Jesuits usually end up in jail, like I talk about Tony Alamo's ministry, and others that are harassed. And I'm going to talk about one today later on in the show, and I'm always looking for this. And another pastor named, what I know about him, I know very little, but I've got a couple little clips that I'm going to play off, 2 videos, regarding a Pastor D who's been jailed by the Jesuits. So this is something that I've noticed. So what I want to do is, first, why don't we do that old little segment I used to do, quotes about the Jesuits. And I'm going to give you 2 or 3. We've done before Lincoln, Hitler, all of these people who knew who they were, whether what side they were on or not. Lincoln understood and wrote much about them, and also said the Civil War would never have happened without the Vatican's control, and they funneled money into the South. But we got some other quotes here, and let me give you one. This was by Robert Jefferson Breckinridge. Born March 8th, 1800, died December 27th, 1871, and he was a politician and a very influential Presbyterian minister. Now, you tell me any Presbyterian now that says this. He said the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, is the enemy of man. The whole human race should unite for its overthrow. For there is no alternative between its total extirpation and the absolute corruption and degradation of mankind. I dare anyone in the Presbyterian who's a Presbyterian, get me one pastor that says that today. Now, I think I've read this one before, but let's do it again. This was James Parton. He's a famous American historian, and he said if you trace up Masonry through all of its orders till you come to the grand tip-top head of Mason of the world, you will discover that the dread individual and the chief of the Society of Jesus, Superior General of the Jesuit Order, are one of the same person. Wow, now tell me any historian today that will say that. Yeah, I mean, we know Tony Alamo and Pastor D now sit in prison because of this, because of their outspokenness, and maybe that's why none of these people talk about it. Interesting, right? Wow. I even see one here. Well, this is one I haven't read. Well, I probably did, but F. Tupper Saucy, I've talked about him much. I've had discussions with him before he died. I've done interviews with him. He said in his book, Rulers of Evil, the Roman Inquisition had been administered since 1542 by the Jesuits and still goes on today. Interesting. Now, back to James Parton and that quote about Masonry. Let me tell you, when I worked in Rome, I was there during the time of the Great Vatican Bank scandal. Now, they're always involved in scandals, but this was huge. And I got to see firsthand how they worked, how they funneled, laundered money through the Vatican, how the head of the Vatican Bank at the time, which was Archbishop Marcinkus from Chicago, my hometown, who I had a chance to try and interview many times after he was airlifted out, after the Italian government charged him with bank fraud. He was even up for suspicion of murder. The American government plane lifted him out of Rome, and he spent the rest of his life in a monastery, in an archdiocese in Phoenix. And I had conversations with his godson and many, many stories that we've talked on in the past. But when I was in Rome, there was a great story that came out in all the French and Italian newspapers regarding how over 150 high-level Vatican cardinals and bishops were involved in Freemasonry, many of them in the infamous P2 Lodge, corrupt as hell. And this was all over the place. Not one story ever got out. I tried to write a few stories. Never would they get out in America, because America's their prized possession here. They want to keep us basically in the dark so they can just take this country and turn it upside down if they want. And that's what they're doing today. Okay, one more quote here, and then we will move on. Okay, how about this? Who's this guy here? Oh, we know Brigadier General Adolf Hitler said something. Okay, let me try to find one I haven't ever read before. All right, here's one. Let's see. Okay, Greg, come on. How about Dostoevsky? The great writer from Russia, 1821 to 1881, famous Russian novelist. What did he have to say about the Jesuits? He said this. He said, the Jesuits are simply the Romish army for the earthly sovereignty of the world in the future, with the pontiff of Rome for emperor. That's their idea. It's a simple lust of power, a filthy earthly gain of domination, something like a universal serfdom, with them, the Jesuits, as masters. That's all they stand for. They don't even believe in God. Not a bad quote by that Russian novelist. I guess we have something in common. And let's, move on. As I said in my other shows, I used to do these short segments. And one of the segments I did was entitled Confessions to the Jesuits. And I used to, every show, give a little spiel about a confession to the Jesuits. And I wrote articles, maybe a series of 50, regarding confessions to the Jesuits. And it was tried to inspire them to talk to me, which was very hard to do back in the old days, maybe 10 years ago. And what confessions to the Jesuits, how I got the idea was that, and if you grow up a Catholic as I do, you're taught to go to confession and give your sins to the priest, and then he tells you to say some Hail Marys and all that kind of stuff. But this was a turnaround, so I would go into my little fictional confessional, and I would say, "Bless me, Father, for you have sinned. Please tell me all of your sins." And, turn the tables on them. And so when the fictional Jesuit priest wouldn't say a word to me, I started to say, "Well, here's what I know about you. Is it true?" So from that point, I would call the different heads of, there's 10, they've divided our country into 10 quadrants, and each has a provincial head. And I would call them and ask them the questions that I would do in my fake little confessional, as they would try in the old days to get me to tell sins. So I said, "Well, now that I realize you've been trying to deceive me my whole life, isn't it about time we turned the tables on you?" And boy, I would ask them a simple question with the provincial, and he would always give me, I never got to them. I always got to their communications director. And I'm going, what the heck kind of church is this? A communications director? And I would give them something like, "Is it true that you've been kicked out of 80-some countries?" And they go, "My son, you are so misinformed." And you can imagine the other questions I asked over the years, and I completely got the Jesuit turnaround, the Jesuit double talk, so to speak. And it's an amazing idea, but I'm just looking back at how the show's evolved. And some people say, "Well, Greg, why don't you do that again?" Well, maybe I shall delve into those things with a different mindset. I was more serious back then. And maybe I can have a little more fun with them. And why not? See how they're doing 10 years later. Maybe start calling the provincial heads and ask them some really... I know a lot more now, so maybe I can really stir the pot a little bit. But anyway, those are a couple things I used to do in the past. Now today, I did want to continue regarding the persecution of Christians around the world. Now, I told you last week I had John Levy on the show, an international attorney who represents a number of these freedom-fighting groups in Africa who are telling us the truth about really what goes on there that's hidden from us here. And I talked about the 70 million Christians that are surrounded in Nigeria, kind of like lambs at the slaughter, controlled by Muslims, radical Muslims who want to take and bring Sharia law to the entire world, with, I might add, the support of the Jesuits. Now, we've also had on people from Rome, insiders from Rome, who've given me information regarding Jesuit priests who have now flipped and become Muslims. And then we have this thing called Chrislam going on, where actually in some churches in Rome, they're giving the Eucharist to Muslims. This kind of satanic ritual now spreading out. And it doesn't shock me, because in the past we've done shows regarding historians who can trace the creation of Islam to the Vatican. And so there's a lot that we're not told. And I want to continue on the persecution regarding people in this country and in Europe, pastors who've been persecuted. And I will, in the second half hour, get back to Tony Alamo, read that article I was going to finish that today, called Bill Clinton, the Pope, and I, written by Tony Alamo, who sits in prison for 175 years. And if you're not familiar with the story, I'll get to it in the second half hour, but this ministry, the Alamo ministry, has been targeted for more than 40 years by U.S. government agencies, including but not limited to the FBI, BATF, CIA, IRS. These informants who have come forward, the FBI informants, with sworn testimony, they were hired to frame Pastor Alamo for his biblical and political views. This sworn testimony was not allowed in his 2008 criminal trial for violations of the Federal Mann Act, in which close examination of the trial and appeal documents indicate such a miscarriage of justice of the worst degree. And it was a frame job from the beginning. These informants who said they were hired to frame him by our government, on the directions of Clinton, etc., it didn't matter. When the Jesuits want you put away, you will get put away. Now, what I want to do first, though, is talk about this Pastor D. I just found out about him yesterday, and I'm always looking for people who understand and are reporting about people who've been in prison for the same stories we tell on this show regarding Jesuit infiltration, Vatican control of our political and secular, and spiritual world, as well as their connection to Satan and the satanic worshiping that I was very familiar with, and had people come to me in Rome telling me this goes on at a time when I couldn't hardly believe it, to be honest with you. It was in the 80s. So what I want to do right now, let me play a 5-minute clip. Someone who is is talking about Pastor D, and then I have another clip regarding what he said in 2015 that may have led to him being imprisoned. So here we go.
Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video here really, because I received some news earlier about Pastor D. I don't know if you've heard of Pastor D. I've shared him a few times on the channel. He's done some great work exposing the agendas of the Jesuits and just the enemy's plans in this world. Maybe a little too much, as it happens, because he's now landed up in jail, and it sounds like he's been having a few problems over the last year or so. Similar to what I experienced in the sense of a character assassination attempt. So I'm very familiar with some of these tactics, but it's got even worse for him in the sense that he's now seems to have landed up in jail in Bulgaria. He fled, from what I understand, he fled the UK due to threats, and now an international arrest warrant has been put out for him, and he's in Bulgaria and fighting extradition. And it seems to be the main reason is because of this agenda he's exposed to do with Pope Francis and the Jesuits. And I'll link the video in the description so you can watch yourself. And I'm just really making this video to ask for your prayers for Pastor D, because he has been a faithful servant and really shared the gospel with so many people and exposed the Jesuits' agenda. And we know that there is a lot of risk involved in doing this, and this really is just a precursor to the things that are to come, where free speech is being stifled if it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative. And I ask that you might pray for Pastor D in this situation, and the hope that we have is so far beyond this world, anything that they can do to us. And as these things begin to happen, we find our hope just is magnified, because they cannot do anything to take away the hope of heaven we have in our hearts. Because our kingdom, when we're in Christ, is not of this world. And that is one thing that really touched me with the message that he sent to people, is just we have to endure to the end. And I actually feel, in a sense, that why should I not suffer when my brother, we're all in this together, he's our brother in Christ. Why should I not suffer when he is suffering for the same things that we're doing here and speaking the truth? And I just encourage you all to hold on. And I don't know if you'll ever see this or hear this, but I've got a couple of verses for you, Pastor D. Romans 8, chapter 18. For I consider that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. and Romans chapter 5, verse 3. And not only that, but we also glory in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. God is with you, brother. We're all thinking about you and praying for you. Please pray for him and for his family. You know, I believe he's got dependents as well. And just that God's will would be done and that our brother would be protected as he goes through this. You know, that God would be with him and give him strength through these trials and tribulations, and that his will would be done and that many would hear the gospel through the coming persecutions and coming whatever is to come in this world, that many people would find Christ, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the main thing that we're all in this for, is to share the gospel, the truth, and that many might come to know and know the Lord and be saved.
Okay, very well said. And I'm going to, in the second half hour, play a 10-minute short clip of what may have really landed him in trouble in the UK. A little clip that he was talking about in 2015, which had a lot to do about the Pope's visit here to America. So I'm going to do that. And everything he said regarding Pastor D, I'd like to say goes for Tony Alamo, who right now sits in prison. He's been there since 2008 and needs to be, we're going to send, I'll get a little into that petition again in the second half hour. But may I add this about both these men, these courageous men. In Psalm 23:4, it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." And that is a prayer that goes out to both Pastor Alamo and Pastor D. And in the upcoming shows, I want to find out more about what's going on in Bulgaria with him, and if he's what's happened. I haven't heard much. If anybody out there has, please let me know. You can get a hold of me at gregbeacon@gmail.com. Now, just to lead in, I got about a minute here, a minute and a half, to the second half hour. This petition we have online regarding trying to get the pardon attorney for Trump. We're going to wait until Trump gets into office. He seems to have said many times he wants to help Christians. Here's one way he can. And so the whole idea is to get people, got a lot of signatures on that petition. And another way you can get people aware of this, because sometimes the powers that be on all these internet things, all of you, Google and all that, they block anything that has to do with the Vatican. I've learned that the hard way. But one thing you can do, people today communicate with Twitter, YouTube. So put a little blurb on the comment sections of every YouTube you watch that says, "Christians are being persecuted in America. Please lend us a hand." And then put the link to the petition for Tony Alamo on there. And I think we'll get more awareness that way as well. Just a little thought. So anyway, like I said, we're going to come back in the second half hour, tell you a little bit more about Pastor D. Hopefully have time to read the story about Tony that the Tony just wrote, Tony Alamo, regarding Clinton, the Pope, and him. And it's quite insightful as we started it yesterday, and it traces back how Clinton basically deceived him in a sense, because he knew him. He had his ministry in Arkansas when Clinton was governor. So quite interesting. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Don't go anywhere. Back in 3 minutes.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this December 6th, 2016 day in our calendar, and we're talking about Christian persecution in the world and centering our discussion on two people, Pastor D from the UK, who has had to flee that country, and he is now in Bulgaria, where he was put in prison. And also, we're going to, in the second part of this half hour, we're going to get back to the petition online regarding the jailing and the prison imprisonment of Pastor Tony Alamo, as well as the persecution of the Alamo ministry. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the second part of this half hour. But, I found this also. There's a guy named Jose Travieso. He calls himself a disciple of God, disciple of Yeshua, and he's presented a 15-minute presentation, and he claims that the video that he made, what Pastor D did, this particular, it's about an 11-minute segment, was one major reason he got thrown in prison on the direct orders from the Vatican. Now, he was a UK pastor, so maybe they're a little bit more even strict there than they are here. But you don't know, not to say, what I'm saying is maybe we can say a few more things here than they can there. I don't know if that's true, but let's find out, because I just found out this pastor from the UK has been imprisoned, and these were over maybe statements he made a year ago regarding the Pope's visit here to America, which is very good. So let's listen to what Jose has to say from Panama, and then also the clip regarding Pastor D.
Brothers and sisters, this is Jose from Panama. This video It's very, very important for you guys to watch the entire video. This is the video that put Pastor D in prison by Pope Francis. This is the statements from this video back in October the 1st that put him under bars by the Pope because of these statements that he made against the Pope. So maybe the Pope and the elite, the Illuminati, the Satanic, the New World Order, the beast system, which in this video he's saying everything that I've been saying since I started, that the Vatican is the beast, the Pope is the Antichrist, he's evil, he claims to be God, he acts like God, well, you'll see on the video. But anyway, it's all about abomination. So eventually, they're going to come after me too. And they don't need to look too hard. Casa number 5, David Chiriquí, República de Panamá. That's where I'm at. Mr. Popey, if you want to come for me, I'm covered by the blood of Jesus Christ. So eventually it's going to happen. So you can come anytime for me if you like. Anyway, brothers and sisters, I wanted to show you this video because it's very, very important. I hope that you stay prayed up. Be vigilant and sober. This election is fraud. This is what the Spirit of the Lord is putting in my heart all day today. From the beginning, I've done a couple of videos. I got another video that's coming, but I've been under attack and the computer doesn't want to act right because, of course, Satan doesn't like for us to warn our brothers and sisters, but this is very important information. So just be vigilant. Don't fear. Don't worry about this election. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. God's still under control. He's still in his throne, and he's still the mighty God, awesome God that we serve. There's no other but him. So don't let no one fool you. Don't let no doctrine, people coming with the different doctrines coming with you or harassing you or anything. Just ignore them. Rebuke them in Jesus Christ's name and Yeshua HaMashiach. God bless you, brothers and sisters. Watch this video and you'll see why the Pope had him arrested in Bulgaria and chased after him. God bless.
Hello my friends, welcome back once again. I'm Pastor D, this is End Times News. Jesus is coming soon. We have got so much to get through. I'm going to plow through as quickly as possible, but I want to start by reading to you Revelation chapter 13 and verse 11. I don't know if you have read this recently, but this is exactly what we have been seeing happen during the last week. Then I saw another beast coming up.
Okay, that cut off here. I will get that right back to you.
Out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. Of course, my friends, I'm referring to Pope Francis. Pope Francis has been on his United States tour. On the 22nd of September, he arrived, and Pope Francis was met by President Obama and his family. And they bowed to Pope Francis symbolically, as the whole nation was about to do, and the whole world is about to do. And on the 23rd of September, the 266th day of the year, the 266th Pope, on 9/23, his 923rd day as being Pope, went to the White House, and both Obama and Pope Francis gave speeches. Pope Francis' speech was very much a rendition of his encyclical, we need to save the planet, we need to work together, we need to come together under my leadership. And Obama's speech was basically saying that Pope Francis is the moral authority. He actually said that his moral authority is not just based on word, meaning the word of God, but also based on his own deeds. In other words, declaring Pope Francis' morality as the morality of this world. The national anthem was also sang in the White House, the national anthem of the Vatican. I encourage you to have a look at the words, because it pledges allegiance. It says, please accept our praise.
Okay, so we got a... Okay, sorry for that interruption. He was talking about the national anthem that was of Rome, that was sung in the White House, and it's very interesting. Go to the original, he did it in Italian, but the English translation is quite interesting. And let's get back to Pastor D.
The words, because it pledges allegiance. It says, please accept our praises, O Rome. It calls Rome immortal. And it even says, we come to you, O heavenly pastor, or holy pastor, talking about the Pope. It is singing the Vatican's national anthem, or playing it, is an act of surrender to the Vatican. Well, we saw Pope Francis go on then to have a meeting with 300 bishops. Again, this is very suspicious. Why 300? There are 449 bishops in the United States. Why not invite all 449? You could understand if there were 20,000, you can't fit them all in one cathedral. So invite perhaps 300 as a symbolic number. My friends, I believe it was a symbolic number, 300. Pope Francis was declaring himself to be Gideon, coming to conquer America with just 300 men. There was no reason to exclude 149 men. Pope Francis then went to Congress the following day, the first pope ever to address Congress. During his speech, which again basically was just a rendition of the encyclical saying we must save the planet, we must work together, he actually stated that we should avoid the temptation to divide people into the righteous and the sinners, the good and the bad. This is an anti-gospel, my friends. This is an anti-Christ gospel. We're actually seeing the beast rising right in front of our faces. Following that, he actually went to conduct a mass. I think it was in St. Patrick's Cathedral. And during this time, because the stampede had recently happened in Mecca, killing 769 people at the time, the death toll was 717, he made a prayer. And in that prayer, he said, to my Muslim brothers and sisters, I unite myself with you all. I mean, my friends, not only is he bringing anti-gospel, but he's uniting himself with the religions of the world. He then went on to reject Jesus Christ by saying that Jesus Christ's life ended in failure, the failure of the cross. Can you not see the beast is rising, my friends? The following day, he was at the United Nations where he made a blasphemous entry on a mule. It wasn't actually a donkey. It was a golf buggy, which is called a mule. Apparently by some people, and he began his UN address by saying, I come in my own name. This is so important, my friends. Remember, Jesus actually said, I come in the name of my Father and you do not receive me. But if another one comes in his own name, him you shall receive. My friends, the whole world is wandering after the beast. That's Revelation chapter 13 verse 3. The whole world is wandering after the beast. We've seen Joel Osteen, Rick Warren and T.D. Jakes actually meeting with Pope Francis among the 1,500 that met with Pope Francis in the White House on International Bisexual Day. Sadly, we also saw Pope Francis have a meeting with Kim Davis, the lady who was recently jailed for refusing to issue licenses for same-sex marriages. She was given 2 rosaries. And it's such a shame. She asked the Pope to pray for her. It was a bit of a sellout. And Congressman Bob Brady, who apparently is a Roman Catholic, I mean, did an absolutely bizarre act of idolatry when he saw Pope Francis's glass of water, and the one that he'd been drinking from, and he went and took the glass of water and drank from it, saying it was holy. And then he even got, I think it was his wife and his mother or his mother-in-law, to put their fingers in the water, and then took the rest of the water home to give to his children and his grandchildren. And my friends, what is going on? This is absolutely bizarre idolatry. We saw the beast, Pope Francis, fulfilling the uniting all the religions together, following his UN speak, where he was in his own name. He actually conducted a ceremony at Ground Zero with all the religions you can think of. Who were they praying to together? Muslims, Jews, Catholic, cardinals. Who is it that they're praying to together, my friends? We know who they're praying to. The whole world is chasing after the beast. Even look at Time magazine, the front cover of Time magazine at this moment. It's got a picture of Pope Francis and the slogan saying the new Roman Empire. At the same time, there's this global citizen festival going on. The global citizen festival, which is, it's just being propagated everywhere, this global citizen. Even companies like EE have been sending out emails saying these are our global goals. The whole world needs to work together. The whole world is getting on board with this agenda, the new world order. My friends, also at the United Nations, Putin and Obama clashed very heavily against each other, spoke against each other's actions in Ukraine and also in Syria. They had a meeting. We're not privy to the content of that meeting. But Putin now has declared that he is going to begin striking ISIS in Syria. And today he gave Obama and the American Air Force 1 hour to get their planes out of Syrian Air Force. And he began striking, and the strikes in Syria. And the allegations against him is that he's not striking ISIS, but that he is striking anti-Assad forces that are being trained by America. This is World War III breaking out, my friends. Anti-Assad forces have also been accused, and this is American-funded and American-supported anti-Assad forces are training children. Abbas, also at this is the leader of Palestine at the United Nations, he has said he was going to drop a bombshell, and boy did he drop a bombshell, my friends. He said that Palestine will no longer stand by the Oslo Accord in 1993. In other words, that is the sort of fundamental principles that were put in place to bring about a peace process. He's accusing Israel of not standing by their side of it, and he said, we will no longer be held by the Oslo Accord. We've seen them firing into Israel every day this week, and Israel, of course, retaliating with their jets targeting Gaza Strip. This is increasing. Of course, the hostility on Temple Mount has also been increasing. ISIS in the area have threatened to behead the Pope this week. Have you also, and this is another crazy thing, I mean, the American military are being told, the ones that are working in the Middle East, supposedly against ISIS, are being told to wear this new patch on their shoulder, and it looks exactly the same as the ISIS patch. I mean, it looks to me like the American military is now an Islamic army. I mean, what is going on? ISIS also executed 2 men who were accused of being Turkish spies this week. We've seen war breaking out or continuing the rest of the world. There was a wedding airstrike, an airstrike in Yemen from Saudi Arabia, although they're denying it was them, which killed over 100 people at a wedding in Yemen. And it's been reported that over 2,300 civilians have been killed in Yemen now in 6 months. North Korean leader said he confirms that they have new and improved nuclear weapons, reconfirming the threat of nuclear war from North Korea. Boko Haram also massacred 15 people in a village in Niger this week. The hostilities continue in Ukraine and even in Turkey as PKK set fire to 4 trucks in Agri and also downed Turkish helicopters and killed 24 soldiers. The war in the Middle East and the world is raging, my friends. Read Matthew chapter 24, which goes on to tell us that there will be other signs, natural disasters, persecution. Well, the Indonesian forest fires are completely out of control, my friends. The Mecca death tolls rose to 769. And tropical storm Joaquin, is it, or Joaquin, which is turning into a hurricane as we speak, and is heading towards Washington, D.C. And the name of that tropical storm actually translates into the Hebrew to mean God has ordained. Is judgment coming to Washington this week? The California lake's completely dried up, and is evidence of that, how terrible it is. One of the main reservoirs giving water to the people of Calliford. God's judgment is coming. Interestingly, this week, as all of this has been happening, the #1 single on iTunes, I think it was by Sam Smith, is called Writing on the Wall. Is that a prophetic statement, my friends? Sinkholes are opening up in China. This sinkhole swallowed cars, and a massive sinkhole, 150 meters wide, swallowed a whole beach resort in Australia. Not to mention the blood moon, which I filmed. You can look through my videos, becoming one of my most watched videos. Managed to sit in my own living room filming that, but look at this beautiful picture of the blood moon over Jerusalem, my friends. This is going to be the most exciting year we've ever seen. The coming 12 months is going to be Bible prophecy fulfilling every single day of the year. We'll keep you posted here on End Times News. Please click subscribe if you've not done so already. Persecution is continuing. The new Nepalese constitution actually makes it illegal for people to convert from one religion to another. So the propagation of the gospel is being made illegal in the country of Nepal. And some of you know of the young 7-year-old child in my own church who has been forbidden to hand out tracts, calling them fundamentalist religious propaganda, just handing out Ray Comfort tracts. And her mother, who worked in the same school, has actually been suspended for allowing this to happen. The Bible says lawlessness will abound. Jesus said it. Planned Parenthood has admitted that 86% of their income has come through abortions and selling tissue. And in Ontario, in Canada, members of Parliament approved the motion to remove the word mother and the word father from government forms. I mean, what is going on is this gender bender agenda, this homosexual agenda is just sweeping through the world. My friends, Jesus is coming soon. Get right with God. I want to just thank you very much for your support. We've passed 900,000 views. We're still in our first year. Praise the Lord. Share the videos. Click like, comment below, and get in touch with me.
Oh.
Grandpa, would you like to dance?
Okay, sorry, there was a couple seconds where they slip in, and that was the end of his discussion. They slip in a little commercial, didn't click it off quick enough. So if you hear "Grandfather, You Want to Dance," that was a commercial that that you see on TV as well. But anyway, what do these two men, what I'm talking about, Pastor D and Tony Alamo, have in common? Well, we know they speak the truth about the Vatican and the Jesuits, the agenda of the Vatican. But what else do they have in common? Why have both of them, Pastor D in the UK and Tony Alamo here in America, been imprisoned? Well, both have big followings. Tony's following, of course, is much larger because he's been at it for 40 years. Millions and millions of people have seen this literature that still goes out today. The ministry is not dead. They're still functioning and getting many hits every week on their website. They're still passing out literature. They're still doing the same thing that they've done for 40 years. But Pastor D came on the scene, and all of a sudden he gets 900,000, 1 million people listening to him. And that's what they look for. They first go after these voices that come out of the wilderness to open people's eyes up, like Tony and like this Pastor D. And the rest of us who are listening to this, we're next. We're next. That's all there is to it. So I hope I'm going to follow up on Pastor D as well as keeping track of the Alamo ministry. So we'll continue to do that. I've got about, 7 minutes here. Okay, so I got about 7 minutes, like I said. And I want to tell you to go to freeTonyAlamo.com, a website that we've started to enlighten you about what's happening there, as well as you can go to LamoMinistries.com and get a lot of stories regarding really what's going on, how this ministry has been targeted. And also then go to the petition site off of freeTonyAlamo.com. You can go there, sign the petition, and I'll get into that more as the weeks go on here before the holidays, because we want to get this petition to the pardon attorney for the President of the United States when Trump takes office, and see if we can get Tony Alamo released. But what I'd like to do now for the remainder of this show, got about 5 minutes, let me continue on with this article. Tony wrote out of prison just recently, the Pope, Bill Clinton, and I. And let me continue with it. He's talked about how Clinton deceived him and how and it moves from there. So he says, when Clinton became president, the government raided Waco and killed a lot of innocent, true Christian men, women, and children there. I did not know them, but I found out that they were a group of really good people. I have heard other stories about them too, and I also heard that Hillary was the main force behind what happened there. And he goes on to talk about that. He says, I knew Clinton was doing his best to make us look like a cult as well. I thought, wow, this guy really is a great deceiver. A few years later, Clinton stated on television that, and this is Tony talking from this article he just wrote from prison, that the worst mistake he made while he was in office was to have those people in Waco killed because they were really not guilty of any wrongdoing, just as we at the Alamo Ministry are not guilty of any wrongdoing. Before all of this, he said that the Christians in Waco were a dangerous cult. I wondered what they did that was so dangerous. And why were members of the military in a tank shooting at our own people? They were not a cult at all. I couldn't figure out why Clinton reversed his thinking about me. Then I remembered I saw pictures of him really warming up to the Pope while he was in Rome. The Pope has never liked me because I exposed his cult as being very satanic. They have murdered millions of people throughout the world. The Pope hates me and the work of God our group has done. One thing we did was expose this dangerous cult for what it is. It is a dangerous because, again, they have literally murdered millions of good Christian people. He's never going to give up any more than I will ever give up. An Arkansas sheriff and many police officers have told me that we were supposed to have been Waco. I found out that Clinton was Catholic. He went to Catholic schools like Georgetown University, a Catholic Jesuit-run institution that teaches hatreds towards true Christianity. The Pope had been persecuting us for years before the Waco massacre. Recently, one of our people was at a Clinton rally. he asked, "Hey, Bill, why don't you get help? Get Tony out." And this was during the presidential campaign recently when Clinton was, stumping, doing on the stump for his wife Hillary. And they asked him, they said, "Hey, Bill, why don't you get Tony out? Because he's not guilty. It's just another persecution coming from the government." Bill said this to one of Tony's members of the ministry. "Oh, I thought that Tony Alamo was dead." "He knows that I'm not dead," said Tony. "I think I appear in his nightmares every night." Again, the biggest cult in the world is the Vatican. It is actually Satan's church. It shows up all the time on television, on the radio, in the newspapers, and the persecution towards us and other true Christian churches. I know that it's Clinton, all the Catholic judges, and the Vatican itself who are responsible for me being in prison. They are also the ones who persecuted me and sent me to prison on false charges for all those years. They spent years trying to get rid of me. They gave me a 6-year sentence in prison for tax evasion. However, we were always tax exempt. We had not used any government money at all. As a matter of fact, I gave $45 to the IRS, which I didn't owe at all. And that's why they figured I owed them 6 years of my life. And I might add, we have gone over on this show many times the frame job of Tony Alamo, and we're about 30 seconds away from the end. I'll continue this tomorrow. Why not? We got a little bit to go on the article, and I know that he was framed on those IRS charges, and we've found that evidence to prove that, and he spent 6 years in jail. That was back in the 90s. So anyway, remember, keep these two people in your prayers, and we'll continue to update the story on the Investigative Journal. And remember this, do your own research. Start really understanding who the Vatican and the Jesuits really are. And boy, I'll tell you something, we're in for big trouble coming up in the months and years to come. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Have a good evening, and see you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.